Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Voices for Life and Justice. Today we have the Pregnant Persons Protection Program, who is, I said project, not program, project. Um, I love the alliteration, but it got me a little bit. Who is here talking about misinformation is murder and how misinformation about the law can be extraordinarily detrimental to a pregnant person's life and what we can do to fight against that. So I'm going to hand it over to them. They are going to be running this and giving you all the information you need to share with your network, your friends, any pregnant people that you know to help to fight against the misinformation. And with that, I'm handing it over.
All right. Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you all so much for being here. We are volunteers with the Pregnant People's Protection Project, and we are so thankful to Rehumanize International for the opportunity to speak in the Voices for Life and Justice web series. Today, we will be discussing the topic of maternal mortality in the context of the various abortion bans which have been enacted across the United States since the overturn of Roe versus Wade. So, sorry, one moment. There we go. Hi, my name is Paityn. I'm originally from Southern California. Back in California, I gained a passion for neurodivergent self-advocacy. So I focused my Girl Scout Gold Award project on helping out neurodivergent elementary school students. And then I also founded my high school's neurodiversity club. And then after graduating high school in 2023, I moved to Texas and started attending the University of North Texas. Then I started doing a little bit of online work with the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising and their Texas Affinity Group. I was the president of my university's Consistent Life ethic organization, Eagles for Life, for 2 years. And I am now the president of my university's neurodivergent student group, STEM Society, and I am pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Rehabilitation Studies.
Awesome. My name is Jenna. I'm originally from Michigan, but now I live in South Bend with my husband and my dog. She's like a golden lab mix. I currently work at a real estate company, and I'm also the co-leader of my local Sidewalk Advocates for Life chapter, where I help do sidewalk advocacy and counseling outside of abortion businesses, both in states with a ban like Indiana, but we also travel out of state once a quarter or so. I'm really passionate about the health of the family unit. I love intergenerational support systems. I think that when one of us thrives, we all thrive. And so I'm really interested into plugging into that support model. I love in my free time listening to music, making music, and I also love Audrey Hepburn movies.
Hi guys, my name is Avie. I am the content manager for POW, the Progressive Abortion Uprising, and I'm the Indiana State Chapter President of America. I'm studying law and philosophy at the university. I've been in the pro-life movement since I was 14, and I did my first Pink Rose Rescue when I was 16 years old. I started debating abortion and focusing on pro-life apologetics and philosophy when I was around and decided that I wanted to defend the unborn with logic and reason as action and legislative process.
All right, so maybe y'all in the audience, you're sitting here in this Zoom call and you're wondering, like, who are these people? Like, what is the Pregnant People's Protection Project? If so, you're in luck because I'm about to tell you. The Pregnant People's Protection Project is not an organization, but rather a coalition of grassroots volunteers which work to amplify the pregnant person's right to life by empowering pregnant people to know that if something does unfortunately go wrong with their pregnancy and their life is at risk, their state's laws protect their right to life-saving care. And also, we like to help people be able to share this information with their physicians when necessary. We do this by developing what we call protection pamphlets, which are printable, easy to understand summaries of states' individual abortion laws with a focus on emergency triage care. So far, we have created pamphlets for Texas, Georgia, and Indiana, and we are currently working on our Louisiana pamphlet. So this work itself is neither pro-life nor pro-choice. In fact, we believe that everyone should be on board with helping pregnant people not get killed by medical malpractice and misinformation. So, as far as like my personal testimony as to why this work matters, I created the Pregnant People's Protection Project in late 2024 after learning of the tragic death of Candy Miller in the state of Georgia because I was angry. I was angry with the media. I was angry with the fear-mongering, but most of all, I was angry as a follower of the consistent life ethic that pregnant people were dying and their deaths were being used in an attempt to justify re-legalizing the elective killings of the preborn in the few states which had enacted protections for them. I saw nothing being done to try to save pregnant people that wasn't also claiming that their right to life was somehow endangered by the right for embryos and fetuses in healthy pregnancies to live free from aggressive violence. We absolutely, unequivocally do not need to choose between protecting these two vulnerable groups. By that time, I had already read the entirety of Texas's abortion law out of both curiosity and the desire to use it for like online talking points. And I found that it explicitly protects medical necessity abortion procedures as legal to perform and also gives exact instructions for physicians on how to document these circumstances. Additionally, I knew that Texas's law did not seek to criminalize the person seeking the abortion. The only penalties described were against abortion providers performing elective abortions. I had heard on social media from groups like Secular Pro-Life, Equal Rights Institute, and the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs that every state's abortion laws were similarly focused on protecting pregnant people, yet people were still dying. Candy Miller in Georgia was scared to seek life-saving care while she was having lethal complications from taking the abortion pill. And she was not the only pregnant person to die in pro-life states, or even in Georgia, after Dobbs v. Jackson passed. So when I had an idea to prevent future deaths like theirs and empower people who can become pregnant with a feeling of safety, I started putting it into action. And now, a year later, we have a team of 10 volunteers so far. We have 3 protection pamphlets available to download on our website, and we will have 1 more by the end of 2025. And I sincerely hope that we can save at least 1 life.
So my reasoning for why I think this work really matters is kind of twofold. The first is just our democratic process. So I don't think it's possible to make an informed opinion about the laws that are governing your state until you know exactly what those laws say and how they impact people. From when I was really young, both of my parents were really involved in just like grassroots political outreach. They used to take us door knocking, like they would go canvassing and take us in our little red wagon, and they would just talk with our neighbors about what kind of things were up on the ballot this year and how we were going to vote and, hopefully persuade people to that persuasion. But really, this idea of people should know the laws that are governing them and they should know the laws that govern their country. And I actually have my little protection pamphlet here. I didn't know what all was in my state's law, the Indiana law, until I did this project. And I had to read out, I mean, it was a little exhausting with the Indiana law, but I had to read out, the whole law and then figure out how to describe this in an easy way that is both legally accurate and helpful to the everyday reader. And unlike Avie, I have zero legal training, so I learned so much doing this. And that is one of the big reasons why I'm a huge champion of this project is regardless of your opinions, you should know what your laws mean and what they say. I mean, it's just really important. Second reason is I know people, people who I love very much who have experienced miscarriage or have experienced ectopic pregnancy. And thankfully for them, those events happened at a time where life-saving care wasn't being weaponized for a certain worldview. But I'm not so confident anymore after hearing all of those stories that especially came out in 2024, it seems. But after hearing so many stories of what I believe to be malpractice, I just couldn't stand by and not do anything. So after I saw what Paityn was doing with this project and what everyone else was doing, I was 100% on board for those reasons.
The Pregnant People's Protection Project is so important to me because Like Jenna said, almost every single woman in my life, including myself, has experienced pregnancy loss. And every single one of those women were scared. Every single one of those women had been dismissed by a doctor at some point in relation to the miscarriage, whether it's being told that they can't be seen until 12 weeks, or whether it's being told to wait out their miscarriage at home. Every single one of them, I mean, every single one had complications from the abortion pill regimen. Almost watched my best friend bleed out in a hospital table because doctors gave her the abortion pill regimen, and she started hemorrhaging, which was pressured onto them by every single instance of this in my life and the people that I've and the people that I love. They did not want to take. It was pressured onto them. The doctors that they are supposed to be able to trust. I'm working on this project because I have also been young and terrified. I have been 18 years old and wondering if I should go to the hospital. And I really want pregnant people to know now that we as pro-life people are in your corner and we are fighting for your right to care, free from misinformation and fear mongering. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the death of Amber Thurman. I wanted to talk a little bit about who Amber was before we first get into everything about her death. Amber was a mother. She survived by her son, Messiah. She was pregnant with twins when she took the abortion pill. She was a medical assistant. She worked in healthcare and she dreamed of being accepted into nursing school, a dream that later came true 3 days after her death when she was accepted. She's a sister. CJ and Andrika Thurman described their sister as the it girl who had an attitude and loved to dance. Amber was a lively young woman, had her entire life ahead of her. So what happened to Amber? Here's what we know. Amber, pregnant with twins, took the abortion pill regimen. Fetal remains were not fully expelled, sending her into septic. The doctors waited over 20 hours to perform a DNC. 20 hours to perform a DNC. Amber passed away at Paityn Henry Hospital in 2022. The reason I say what we know is because this case has been so muddled in the media that it took 3 of us collectively multiple days to really get to the meat of the story. But here's what we don't know. We don't know why she took the abortion pills. We don't know if she took them for miscarriage management, or we don't know if she was actually intending to abort her twins. Did she know she was pregnant with twins? Did she know that the dosage of mifepristone and misoprostol most likely would not have worked for twins? Was there proper informed consent? Was she able to give proper informed consent? And was there an ultrasound option? Was that an option for her? Like I said, it has been almost impossible to find out what truly happened to Amber and find out answers to these questions. I think that is very telling of the media's portrayal of this story. I think that it's very, very telling that we can't even find out what happened because there's so much political chess going on first. So extensive malpractice. The doctors have a history of being negligent. The doctors have a history of being, I guess, from the reviews, creepy would be the word that was most commonly used. I think that you can read the review here. It is most of the reviews for this hospital look along those lines, look like that. Yeah, definitely not the word you want associated with your ER doctor. So one of the most important, one of the cases that stood out to us as a team the most was the case of Maya Gedahun. Maya was a 2-year-old girl who was bitten by fire ants, and she was sent into anaphylactic. When Maya's treating physician went to intubate her, the doctors realized there was no pediatric-sized intubation equipment available, the complaint said. The complaint said that Maya's parents had to watch them open and close drawers looking for a pediatric-sized intubating tube while their daughter was suffocating in front of them. This is not the first time that this hospital has neglected to give life-saving care. There is a pattern behind their wanton neglect. I read probably 20 or 30 reviews of this hospital saying that pretty much the same thing, that they neglect you, that they will not, long wait times, even in cases of like severe like emergency. I think that the hospital is like, I'm going to figure out the way to put this. I had it in my notes and then I accidentally. So the hospital has a history of lawsuits as well. Maya's parents have sued for medical malpractice. Remember correctly from the case that I read the complaint. They're suing for medical malpractice and neglect. The complaint didn't say if they've won or not yet. This hospital has a long track of lawsuits for almost this exact same thing.
Okay, so that's a pretty grisly tale, and it's important to notice that all of this happened in 2022. So now we're going to fast forward about 2 years, and this is when the media really picked up Amber's story. And today I'm going to highlight for you how her story was portrayed by the media, and then I'm going to show you a little bit about the Georgia abortion law itself. This is going to be really an example of what we're trying to do with this project. There is this gigantic gap that I'm going to show you of the law itself, the text and the intended implications of the law versus what the media is saying about the law and how there are vulnerable people caught in the crosshairs of that. So let's go ahead and look at these headlines. This first one is the dark ProPublica article, Abortion Bans Have Delayed Emergency Medical Care. This one is written by ProPublica. It is pretty much the source that broke this story in a really big way. They were interested in it, first of all, because of the death of Candy Miller earlier this same year, 2024. So this was kind of becoming a really important topic. It was also an election year, and so people were really looking into laws and things that had happened in the past couple years to evaluate those for voting decisions. And I really want to highlight these titles for you. So this first one, the ProPublica article, Abortion Bans Have Delayed Emergency Medical Care. In Georgia, experts say this mother's death was preventable. And that is suggesting a very direct causal link between the abortion ban and the delayed care. It's coming right out and saying this is why Amber's care was delayed. So news outlets began reporting this. And so the ProPublica article, it's a really important one. So it was comprised of mostly a summary of the hospital stay of Amber Thurman. And this summary was given to the Georgia Maternal Mortality Committee for the purposes of their investigation. And then the committee gave a summary of that to ProPublica. So we have kind of a telephone situation going on where there's the medical records of Amber's stay. There is the summary of those records that was given to the Maternal Mortality Committee. And then there was what they gave this reporter. There are a couple comments in this article from the North Carolina abortion clinic where Amber obtained the pills. And it's important to note in this article that broke the story, there is no comment from either the Georgia Department of Health, and more importantly, in my opinion, there is not a single comment from the hospital communications department or the attending doctors and nurses. Okay, we haven't heard a peep from them, which I think is interesting because Avie was just telling us about this tragic case of that little girl. And even in that case, we got some kind of an explanation. Oh, we didn't have the right intubation equipment. And I think it's really interesting that there's absolutely no attempt at an explanation from the hospital. I just personally find that telling. The second article is an opinion article. So you can kind of give it a little more grace for crazy headlines, in my opinion, because the opinion section is always a bit more fun. But Amber Thurman was killed by Georgia's abortion ban. There will be others. That is a scary headline to read. And again, there's that direct causal link that we were talking about earlier. A quote from this article directly says this: Amber Thurman died a painful, preventable death after doctors at a hospital there refused to perform a simple procedure that could have saved her life because the law did not allow them. Okay, so this is the direct claim from journalists. That is like what people are learning about Georgia's abortion law from the newspapers and their phones and everything. That's what we're learning. So let's go ahead and see. Yes, this is from a press release from Reproductive Freedom for All, which was formerly National Abortion, just a big abortion thing. They released an ad with the faces of many women who had died after getting an abortion. And you can see in that first section, abortion bans create silence, fear, and shame. Again, everything about this is blaming the bans. We're going to look at one more article here. This is going to be a People magazine. So again, I wouldn't really expect this to be necessarily excellent reporting, but they are using the ProPublica article as their source, like all of these things are. And very blatantly says, due to Georgia's stringent anti-abortion laws, doctors didn't proceed with a D&C. This is a very blatant statement of fact, and in my opinion, a very irresponsible piece of misinformation. Again, most people are not going to go ahead and read the Georgia abortion laws to see what kind of care is accessible. Instead, they are going to read People magazine, they're going to read The Guardian, they're going to read ProPublica, and they are going to absolutely be so afraid that our laws are pitting born people against preborn people, and they're going to feel like they have to choose between the well-being of one, which is not true. So here is the impact of the media's portrayal. First of all, it gives so much fear to people, right? It's common online to hear people share that they are afraid to be pregnant in states with abortion bans. They're told that they won't be able to get emergency care if anything goes wrong. It's really popular to watch in data when you see an abortion ban in a state or even restrictions. Out-of-state abortions from people in that state increase. Birth control rates increase. People are afraid to be pregnant because they think that they won't be protected. This really made me sad as far as the fear goes. So there's a quote from Amber Thurman's sister, and she said that her nephew, Amber's son, said this to her. She said, "My nephew is afraid to go to the doctor. He's scared to go to the hospital because he says, what if they do me how they did my mom? Okay, and that is just so tragic. No one should ever believe that that's a normal thing for the hospital to do. No one should believe that this is just, life in the great US of A. Um, and so that is something that's very, very tragic. Another thing these articles created was obscurity, the perceived gap between the claims of legislatures and the impact of the law. Confusion about what the laws mean. Again, for me, there's that loss of the democratic process. How can you know what you think about a certain proposal unless you know exactly what it means? And these articles, they did not give any kind of accurate analysis of the law at all. The ProPublica one kind of tried, like in the middle to the end. The ProPublica article was rather long, so of course they tacked it on to where people would mostly not be paying attention, in my opinion. Sorry, allegedly. Another thing that this did was shift pressure. So before this story became nationwide news, the hospital system that Amber Thurman was taken to was largely understood to have an abysmal standard of care. Its Facebook and Google reviews, as Avie showed us, are flooded with stories of delayed care and unresponsive or just plain creepy doctors. The system should be held accountable. But in 2024, when these stories broke and when journalists started to talk this way, all of the pressure that should have been on this hospital system for an abysmal standard of care and for harming their patients shifted to laws. Laws that are supposed to protect the unborn, but are instead being claimed to harm born people. So let's go ahead and look at what the law actually says, because none of these articles did it really well. This is a section from our protection pamphlet. Again, you can get yours at pregnantpeoplesprotection.weebly.com. It's very helpful and really clear summary. This just shows us the Code of Georgia, Title 16, Chapter 12, Article 5, amended by Life Act. You can look all of this up. It states that abortions may be performed in cases of medical emergency or medical futility at any gestational stage, or in the case of reported rape or incest prior to 20 weeks in gestational age. It provides clear definitions of abortion, which is the intentional death of the unborn baby. It provides definitions of medical emergency and medical futility, and it clarifies that miscarriage and ectopic pregnancy care are not legally classified as abortions. I'm going to give those definitions really quick here because I think that's important. Medical emergency, according to the law, this is what the law says a medical emergency is. That can be a reason for D&C. Medical emergency means a condition in which an abortion is necessary in order to prevent the death of the pregnant woman or the substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman. So this comment that we had in, I think, the Guardian article, it said the state outlawed the procedure. It outright claimed this. You can look at it yourself. It does not outlaw the procedure of a D&C, but it does outlaw it when it is a case of intentionally trying to kill an unborn human being, although it does have these exceptions for babies that were conceived in rape or incest. Let's see here. Okay, next slide. All right, so the Georgia Department of Community Health, when all of these things broke, decided to issue a statement to confirm what we know. It said the law does not prohibit the removal of a dead unborn child caused by spontaneous abortion or the removal of an ectopic pregnancy, nor does the law determine that death of the mother be imminent for a doctor in his or her reasonable medical judgment to determine that a medical emergency exists. Yeah, the reasonable medical judgment thing I think is an important thing to remember of it does give doctors this kind of leeway because legislatures cannot know the ins and outs of every situation. There has to be a reasonable medical judgment. And this phrase, a medical emergency exists. Amber was diagnosed with sepsis, which, if you look it up on Cleveland Clinic, you can literally Google this. It outright says this is a medical emergency. I'll read the quote from Cleveland Clinic. It's sepsis is a life-threatening medical emergency caused by your body's overwhelming response to an infection. Without urgent treatment, it can lead to tissue damage, organ failure, and death. As we just read, all of these things are provided for in the Georgia Life Act, in the Georgia abortion restrictions. So we can look, here's a little table that just shows us what I'm just telling you guys. Here are the exact quotes from the law. And then you can see the impact if you're lazy like me and you just want to read like dumbed down language, because that's what I always look for. Okay, so as you can see, there's nothing in the law that can be construed to support denying Amber the DNC. As we hear from the ProPublica story, which claims to have a summary of her medical records, her twins were already dead by the time she got to her hospital. And she was already in an emergency medical situation. There's nothing in the text of the law, and you can look it up yourself, that says that this situation counts as an elective legal abortion per the law's definition. And we got to remember that this summary of the hospital stay, there was no comment from doctors. There was no comment from nurses. And so if the burden of proof is on people to say that the abortion ban did this, they have nothing to go on. And as for us, who personally, I believe this was a gross case of medical negligence. I have no idea what the intent could be, but we don't have anything to go on as far as a reason or an explanation for why the doctors behaved this way, why she had to wait 20 hours. And so all of this is going to have an impact that Paityn is going to describe to you guys.
Yes. So, this horrible story of this woman who, her body was disrespected. She died because she was not cared for. And then her story of how she died was then disrespected to fit a pre-existing agenda. So, what can we learn from the tragic story of Amber Thurman? First, it is critical to remember that the media is creating fear, as Jenna was discussing with articles from People Magazine, The Guardian, ProPublica. The media is actively creating fear of the law, of laws that are meant to be protecting our preborn siblings. And it's not just like, oh, people are scared, boo-hoo. No, people like, this is dangerous fear. Specifically looking back at, I mentioned Candy Miller earlier. She was afraid to get care when she started having complications from the abortion pill regimen. So this fear isn't just something that is sad and upsetting. It is something that can kill people. So if a person who is experiencing a life-threatening pregnancy hears and believes propaganda like this, one thing they might do is they might not go to the hospital at all because they might be scared that they're going to go to jail for either having an abortion or being accused of having an abortion if they're having a miscarriage. People hearing this propaganda, what they might do is order deregulated abortion pills with no in-person follow-up. This is dangerous for a couple reasons. One is that if you're ordering these pills and you're not having any sort of medical care to ensure that everything's going well afterward, what if there's a complication? Another reason it's dangerous is because ordering something that is, like, in this instance, intended to prevent your death, ordering that by mail and then waiting for it to come in, that's not going to work for an emergency situation. Neither will trying to get an abortion referral out of state, because that can take time. People who are, like, in medical emergencies, they don't have time to wait for things like that. And sadly, something else that people might do in these circumstances is try to deal with it themselves through different methods besides the abortion pill to attempt to save their lives by ending their pregnancy. These are all very real possibilities of what can happen when a person is scared and experiencing a medical emergency. But let's say that a person who is pregnant and is experiencing a life-threatening medical emergency does not believe this propaganda that they're hearing, so they go to the doctor. Well, doctors also hear propaganda. Doctors are not immune to propaganda. Doctors are people like us who are just as vulnerable to hearing and believing social media fear-mongering as anybody else. Like, doctors love doctors, they're human too. They might not have the time to update themselves on the rapidly changing abortion laws. Maybe this isn't something that they're being given direct training on in their workplaces, and they're just so busy because they're doctors, and they don't have time to go through and read it themselves. And if a doctor is hearing and believing this propaganda that life-saving care is not legal, then they're going to be afraid to lose their source of income if they try to perform an emergency procedure and they're not entirely sure whether it's legal or not. So a doctor who is afraid of losing their source of income is going to do what they can to protect their job security. And unfortunately, this can sometimes mean delaying emergency care. So, after Roe versus Wade was overturned in the Dobbs v. Jackson case, it, like, genuinely broke my heart to see so many people online so scared of suffering from pregnancy-related complications that could threaten their lives and not being able to be saved by doctors. At the time when Dobbs was decided, I was 17 years old, and the day after Dobbs v. Jackson was decided, I saw a post on Instagram by an account called Anti-Abortion Social Club, which consisted of a screenshot of a tweet by pro-life podcaster Mallory Finch, which reads as follows: "It is infuriating how people are trying to scare women about ectopic pregnancies and miscarriages. Women are genuinely afraid of scenarios that are not even real. The abortion industrial complex is pure evil." So I reposted this to my Instagram story on my personal account and provided the following commentary. "It breaks my heart that people with uteruses have to go to bed with nightmares about dying from ectopic pregnancies since the reversal of Roe because of lies and propaganda. Fearmongering hurts real people. Please stop spreading false information. It's dangerous. People with ectopic pregnancies in anti-abortion states may end up not seeking care and dying because of these harmful posts floating around with misinformation about ectopic pregnancy treatments. Let that sink in." So, analyzing this now, almost 3.5 years later, I realized that I got some things wrong and some things right in my commentary. What I got wrong was the assumption that with the passage of pro-life laws, doctors would immediately know their rights as to how they can intervene in an ectopic pregnancy or a similar life-threatening circumstance. I was wrong that people are not going to die. They are dying. But what I got incredibly right, albeit for a partially incorrect reason, was that fearmongering hurts real people. I was right that it could prevent people from seeking care, but I was wrong in not realizing that even for those who seek care, doctors may refuse them the care that they are legally entitled to due to their own fears of legal repercussions. Now that we have seen multiple cases of the latter, it's even more critical to push back against the spread of murderous misinformation. So, what lessons specifically can we learn from Amber Thurman, from what happened to her? The first is that states' relatively new abortion restrictive laws are not well understood by a lot of people. Most people are not legal experts. Most people are not law students. We love you, Avie, but most of us are not law students. And people are typically not going to sit down and read through the entirety of a law. In some states with abortion bans, the laws are pretty short. They're like decently short in Georgia and Texas, but there's a really long abortion law in Indiana. So it took us a long time to read through it and summarize it for the protection pamphlet. And the average person, even if they were to go and try to read through the entirety of a law, it's not always in the most understandable and accessible wording for people who are not so familiar with legal jargon, I guess you could call it. Another lesson we can learn is that even if a pregnant person knows their rights to life-saving care, their doctor might not, and vice versa. So there's this holdup of some people who are going to be scared to go to the doctor. That is dangerous. That is critical time that is being wasted when a person should be having their life saved. There's also the holdup of if a doctor isn't entirely sure what can legally be done, that's going to cost precious time. Oh. Sorry, a little bit of a lighting change. So the third lesson that we can learn is that injustices like these must be amplified without being co-opted to fit pre-existing agendas, because people are dying. So what we saw with Amber Thurman was her story was told far and wide, but it was told under this view, this preconceived notion that, oh, it must be because of the abortion bans. And that was how her story was used. Whereas stories like hers, what needs to be amplified is the facts, the information about what happened, so that we can prevent it from happening to other people. So the Pregnant People's Protection Project, we are applying these lessons in our work. First, we are increasing the accessibility of information about the law. We're increasing portability of that information. And then we are making sure that it can reach as many people as possible. More specifically, in our protection pamphlets, we summarize the law accurately yet concisely in language that is easy to understand. We make it portable by making sure that our pamphlets are super easy to print out and carry around in a bag or a purse. So especially during a medical emergency, having this information literally physically on hand can be critical. And as far as reaching as many people as possible with this resource, this is something that we as the project volunteers, we can't do this on our own. We need the help of everyone who comes across our project and our pamphlets to share our website, as well as our Instagram and our TikTok accounts. Share it on your platforms, share it to your friends, and especially share it to people in the states which we have created protection pamphlets for. Thank you all so much for attending this webinar. We're now going to open up our Q&A session, so please, if you have any questions at all regarding the work that we do or the Amber Thurman case, please ask away.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, if you want to ask a question, you can either type it in and I will read it out loud, or you can come off mute and I will let you guys go ahead. We've got, will you create one for Florida? First question.
Yes, we absolutely will. In fact, that's probably the one that we're gonna do right after we finish the Louisiana pamphlet. Florida is definitely a state that needs a protection pamphlet. I'm seeing someone else asking about Mississippi. I don't personally know much about the abortion law in Mississippi, but if it's particularly restrictive, those are the states that we're focusing on making pamphlets for first. So if it's like a near total ban, like we're gonna make a pamphlet pretty soon. So yeah, Florida and Mississippi, will definitely be keeping those on our list to do next. I see a question from Ellen Campbell. What kind of help can people give to help create pamphlets for more states? That is a great question. Thank you for asking. If you have Instagram, please direct message us at Pregnant People's Protection, so that we can be in contact. And typically what our volunteers will do is, if we're working specifically like on the pamphlets themselves, the volunteers are going to be reading through the entirety of the abortion law and then sort of condensing it, summarizing it, getting the key points out of it, putting it onto something that can be printed out in just something very simple. The more people we have working on it, the faster we get pamphlets done. So if anyone here is interested in volunteering, please direct message us on Instagram. We would really appreciate that. Other things that our volunteers do besides just creating the pamphlets, even though that is like the meat and potatoes of it, volunteers also work on sharing about the project. Recently, we've been starting to develop and give out flyers regarding the Pregnant People's Protection Project. So that's our next sort of step in outreach. Another thing that our volunteers do is special projects like this whenever they come up. Lauren from Rehumanize so kindly messaged us on Instagram, and I asked the volunteer chat, hey, who wants to do this? And Jenna and Avie were so kind to join me in giving their time to represent this project for Rehumanize's web series.
Great presentation, by the way. This is really interesting and fascinating. I work in healthcare, and so I was just wondering, I know that you're trying to spread the word about these pamphlets. Do you guys have a way to like get into hospitals where it can be like on a brochure section just for easy access? Because I spent a lot of my time when I worked full time in healthcare, like doing in services with nurses and doctors, and just I didn't know if you guys have explored that option, just because when people come to the hospital, as you know, they're so overwhelmed and inundated, and they just need to have that. I think it's great that you guys have, and it's really important that telling them to do patient advocacy and request that. I just didn't know if like there's a way to like educate the patient advocacy arm or someone to kind of like infiltrate in the hospital system about this issue.
Jenna, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, so your question is so important. That's actually something that while we were on the call developing this presentation, we at the project were really just shooting ideas, because what you said is so important. Like doctors are already inundated, healthcare professionals already have a lot going on, and ideally we shouldn't have to have patients educate doctors about this. We should be able to reach doctors and healthcare workers first. So I had an idea And like we're still in a development phase for like how do we do this? How do we reach hospitals? But I had an idea. Like I do weekly sidewalk advocacy outside of abortion businesses. So we put together gift bags of just like nice things for people and a couple leaflets and information about alternatives, and we start conversations about abortion. And I thought it would be interesting to create like a gift bag for healthcare workers because I mean they're also
Mhm.
really stressed. Like that's a really stressful job. So creating a gift bag with them and then putting our protection pamphlet in here, and
Yeah.
maybe a little index card with, hey, this is what this is. Here's how it applies to you. Having that conversation with people in the hospitals, that's something like that I, as not a healthcare worker, would feel confident in doing if I could find a way to contact, like, get into the hospital. So I'd be
Right.
interested, like, what person would I contact to get that started? You know, like, is there a department for those kinds of things? I genuinely don't know, but it's something we
Yeah.
want to do.
No, that's a great idea because I'm thinking it kind of like in the way that when you go inside clinics, you drop literature or you like drop literature in like different public spaces. And if like
Mhm.
you just entered hospitals, because like I live in Virginia, but I'm like, and I'll think about it next time I go to work, like what would be the person? Like, is it a volunteer arm where you go in and then you just lit drop in the
Yeah,
hospital,
yeah,
you
totally.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, we have, I mean, I'm like a printaholic. I print everything. So I have all our literature right now. But like we have our protection pamphlets, and then we also have these flyers that we're working on, just
Mhm.
putting in places around our cities.
Yep.
Um, and like just expanding reach. And I think that's going to be a really important thing if anybody on this call could just think of one way to get this pamphlet into the hands of someone in a state where we either have a pamphlet or need to do one. Like, help us reach people because
Yeah.
we don't have the backing that the media has. We don't have the reach that they have. We're a very new project, but
Hmm.
we're very passionate, and this is so important.
Yeah.
People are targeting states like my state where there are abortion bans, and we shouldn't have to choose between the well-being of a born person and the preborn person. We should be able to have
Yeah.
laws protecting both of them.
Mhm.
So, you like even just pay attention to news sources. Like what are people saying and how and like reading deeply into that and understanding
Yeah.
we can start these conversations. And we really do want to do that more in the medical sphere because these are our people, you know.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah. Another question in the chat from Amanda. Do you want to solely focus on the abortion ban's effect on pregnant women, or do you have any larger ambitions to focus on other areas of maternal mortality? That is an excellent question. Um, Off the top of my head, my first instinct is to say it's all important, but there's other organizations that are focusing on other aspects of maternal mortality already. I think that from what I've seen, the Pregnant People's Protection Project is sort of filling a niche that is really only filled as like a side project by other pro-life groups. Like earlier I mentioned, secular pro-life will sometimes do things analyzing what is legal and what's not legal, but that's not really going to reach um, people outside of the pro-life movement. So my first instinct is to say, for now, this is our focus because we're the only people really doing what we're doing. Um, but it's definitely um, a very important and pressing issue, especially um, given the racial disparities of maternal mortality. Both Candy Miller and Amber Thurman were Black women. I don't think that's a coincidence because Black women have such a high rate of maternal mortality. Um, and there's other organizations which focus on those things specifically. Um, I would recommend looking into them, supporting them. But for now, this is our niche that we're filling. Any comments from Jenna and Avie about this?
It's super important. I think that focusing for now would be really important, but maybe we finish all our pamphlets and we find us like a regular way to distribute them, and maybe we really hit a groove and find we have the people power and we have the time and ability to do more maternal mortality things, because I think that's really important. I think that it's pretty ridiculous that the choices we give people is either you can have like access to care for ectopic pregnancies and miscarriages and so forth. Or you can have laws that protect preborn children from slaughter, but you can't have both. And I just think that's abysmal and it needs to be worked on.
Thank you, Lauren, for dropping in the chat about Abide Women's Health Services. They do excellent work in Dallas. Thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely.
Avie, did you have anything to say about like our future
I think
ambitions?
I think that yeah, like what Jenna said, once we make all of our pamphlets and once we make sure that our first mission is truly we've done all that we can do, I think it would be, really important to branch out because, maternal mortality is still a huge issue in the United States of America. And I think that we as pro-life people have to address it head on. I think that's definitely something that would be interesting for us to look into in the future once we finish our first mission.
Yeah. Raised hand from Dane.
I wonder, in addition to the looking, I guess, at the let's focus on correcting the misinformation around abortion bans, is there any interest perhaps in taking the project in the direction of either here's how you get contraception without going to Planned Parenthood or other abortion providers, or perhaps an equivalent of that for HRT as an alternative? I just wonder, since it feels like there are gaps, I guess, in the market where it would be good to have pro-life as it in those spaces, and where it's not just pro-choicers largely pro-choicers doing that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that would necessarily be something that is pertinent to this project specifically. Like I said earlier, we're not an organization, we're just this project. That's something that I've thought about doing independently, though, creating some sort of a web resource for divesting from Planned Parenthood for people who need things like birth control or hormone replacement therapy. I think that that's very important. I don't think that that is something that we as the Pregnant People's Protection Project will be focusing on, though.
Anything else? Or I'll have just the last statement. If you want to get involved, I will say every state is different with their laws, right? And some of them are very strange. I live in Louisiana. Louisiana, after a case that caused some media attention, was like, you know what, we'll just define every single condition. And so we have a list that's literally 25 conditions that they call medical futile. And so it's very odd. That's what Louisiana does. Other states do odd things too. And if you're in that state and you know something about what's happening in Mississippi, something that's happening in Florida, it's great to raise your hand and say, hey, I have some insight there. So definitely, reach out. Feel like the whole point of this series is making people feel like they're empowered to make a difference. So we really hope that you will feel that and you'll reach out and think about these other things too. Think about what we can be doing to lower the maternal mortality rate, what we can be doing to divest from Planned Parenthood. Like all of these things are so important, but specifically for this project, it's saving the lives of pregnant people who are being literally killed by misinformation in a very, very real sense. So I very much appreciate you being here for joining us for this. I hope that you will continue to come. This will be on our website probably tomorrow, if not the next couple days, for you to share with your friends, with your network, with Dana, like hospital administrators. I mean, literally anyone that you know who might be able to utilize this kind of information, please share, because that's one of the best things you can do, is just letting people know that this resource exists, that it's building, that there are people who are out there fighting this information. So thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to the project for the final goodbyes, and then sign off for the night.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren. Again, we really appreciate the opportunity to be featured in Voices for Life and Justice. Any last statements from Jenna and Avie?
Just thank you everybody for coming, and find ways like this to just get educated about what laws mean and how you can help your neighbor.
I want to say, print out our pamphlets and pass them out everyone you see.
Yeah, we have pamphlets so far, as a reminder, for Texas, Georgia, and Indiana. And then by the end of this calendar year, we will have a pamphlet out for the state of Louisiana. So if you live in those states, it's especially important to be like, hey, this thing exists. You want to learn more about your state's abortion laws? Here you go.
Yeah, I love that. And I will tell you all too, if you have a library card, most libraries do allow a certain number of free prints every day. So that's a way to do this on the fly, on the cheap. So look into that too as a resource. Let's see, Dane is just saying something about, yeah, the mental health exemptions. Mental health exemptions, probably more than we can get into at the time, but yes, some states do have some different language surrounding that, especially as it relates to suicidality or something like that. But it's very state to state, law to law, but something that yeah, you have to kind of look into. But thank you all so much for joining us. We're signing off, and I hope you have a really great rest of your evening.